The bad news for Donald Trump, he probably will not get more votes than Hillary Clinton. The good news for Donald Trump and the political equivalent of the walking dead that now surrounds him, he certainly will get more votes than Bill Clinton. Those zombies around Trump have crashed whatever campaign he actually had and are this close to taking the entire Republican Party with them because while certainly they want to defeat Hillary, relitigating the Bill Clinton presidency for the 4,000th time and beating her up and beating him up is almost as satisfying. And Trump, who by this point barely has any idea where he is or what month this is or when the election day is, has been subsumed by what we once called the vast right-wing conspiracy. The woman from Connecticut let out a snort and a guttural laugh. Vast, she said to me on the afternoon of Sunday, March 15th, 1998. There's like a dozen of us. I'll explain it to you later. It was just 47 days since the phrase had been introduced to the public parlance. A few days into the Monica Lewinsky scandal, Hillary Clinton herself told the Today Show, I mean, look at the very people who are involved in this. They have popped up in other settings. This is the great story here for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president. And thus was the term the vast right-wing conspiracy born. Well, not really. It had appeared in the Detroit News as early as 1991, and here, sadly, after the bombing of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City in 1995. Republicans mocked the 1998 phrase immediately, but the Republican I was with never questioned that Hillary Clinton had the idea right, only that she had gotten the vast part wrong. Vast, she said again after serving me a steak the size of a dinosaur, and after we watched with a pretty much equal boredom an overhyped interview on 60 Minutes with another Bill Clinton accuser named Kathleen Willey. Let me show you how this works. We went upstairs to her office. She pointed to her fax machine. There is the vast nerve center of the vast right-wing conspiracy. The woman from Connecticut said she would get incoming faxes on that machine from any one of a handful of people. Make sure then that she cut off anything that identified the fax machine from which the fax was sent, and then simply fax it back out to her own brother, who would literally hand it to his friend. Drudge, she called him. Matt Drudge. The faxes would contain gossip about the Clintons or tidbits from investigations that had gone nowhere or anything else that might hurt or just waste the time of the White House. Their sources were few. She mentioned a woman called Kelly Ann, whose name I thought I recognized. There was also a guy, an investigator in Congressman Dan Burton's office named Bosch or Bosley or something. There were also a couple of minor folks inside Ken Starr's office, and she also mentioned a senator. Now, I wasn't sure then, and I'm not sure now if she meant him or just somebody who worked for him. They send him to me. I figure out how we can do the most damage with them. I fax them to my brother. He gives them to his pal Drudge. The woman from Connecticut now turned slightly and looked seductively at me out of the corners of her eyes. Of course, I could send them to you. Why, you stop and probably come to the same conclusion that I did right at that moment then, that I was not just being shown the not-so-vast right-wing conspiracy, I was being recruited, offered the most public position in it. I should explain the context. I was then hosting a news hour on MSNBC, which had not even 2 months earlier gone from complete obscurity to market dominance, because we went all Lewinsky. And to that point, I had been so neutral in my coverage that no less a partisan figure than Mary Madeline had asked me on her radio show if I was a conservative or a liberal, since she couldn't tell. With the woman from Connecticut doing the pitch, they wanted me to be the TV version of Drudge, taking out these washed, exaggerated, sometimes interesting, sometimes even true dings against the Clintons and offer them up as news scoops to my suddenly huge TV audience. The woman from Connecticut, of course, was named Laura Ingraham. And from long before this, she was part of this unfortunate image at the Republican convention in Cleveland. She had been pushing Donald Trump, and she is behind him and advising him still. We were on a date. Laura was and is a bright and charming woman and actually very sweet, except for the, instantaneous blind anger part that follows the mention of the name Clinton. The date was more than just steak and TV and fax machines. We had spent the afternoon at the Supreme Court, where she had clerked for Clarence Thomas. She got me inside the chamber and had me sit in his chair. Justice Thomas wasn't there, so it was exactly the same as if he had been there. The others, well, Drudge, That Kellyanne was Kellyanne Fitzpatrick, and why I had recognized her name was she was a ubiquitous presence on the burgeoning anti-Clinton TV show market. She later married one of the lawyers who worked on the Paula Jones lawsuit. His name was Conway. She's now Kellyanne Conway, and yes, she's Trump's campaign manager. Or at least she was when we recorded this, so you should check the internet to make sure it's still true. The investigator in Congressman Burton's office, Bosley, whatever, that was David Bossie. He would be forced out shortly thereafter following an accusation of doctoring evidence against the Clintons. I mean, doctoring it too much even for the Republicans. Then he ran a little group called Citizens United and helped to ruin America. And now, David Bossie is Trump's deputy campaign manager. So there are two things to understand. When Hillary Clinton said there was a vast right-wing conspiracy to undermine her husband, she was wrong. It wasn't vast, but it sure had stamina, even as its public faces like Newt Gingrich committed career suicide trying to lay the Clintons low. It stayed alive, often underground, until the opportunity arose for a comeback. You know, like Dracula. And that's the second thing to understand. That opportunity was Donald Trump. He probably doesn't even realize it, but now you do. And in this part of this nightmare journey, Trump is actually something of a victim. Sure, Ingram and Conway and Bossie and Drudge and the others would like to see him elected, but if he crashes and burns and ruins his businesses and has to leave the country in disgrace and goes into the history books as the man who tried to replace the government of the United States with a dictatorship with a bad comb-over, hey, at least they scuffed Hillary up again. And a President Hillary means they can get the band back together and spend the next 4 years conspiring against her. They got what they wanted. That's the closer. I'm Keith Olbermann. Watch this space.